All right, we are live. Hey, Tyler, how are you?
We're back. Hey, I'm doing all right. How you doing, Mac?
Good, man. There's been a lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of stuff. I know you've been busy as well, man. So, number
Mm-hmm.
one, I guess, no summer? When does summer start? Like June, right?
It depends on who you are. If you're in college, I guess that's going to be June, but for us, it's never.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in Michigan here, it's been ridiculously cold.
hmm
So it's been crazy. Like today, it's I think the high is 52 degrees. Where? How about you in Colorado?
Yeah, yesterday was actually like 70s, but we're 55 right now. Like yeah, Denver kind of it doesn't really keep the heat as much as the
Gotcha.
lakes, so it kind of fluctuates.
Gotcha. Well, welcome, folks, to dSIPRouter Weekly. Here's where we just talk about all things going on with dSIPRouter. We talk about what's happening in some of the, from a development perspective, some support issues if they are, or some bugs or things of that nature, or just new things that we're working on. So maybe I'll start, and Tyler, you can jump in or add comments. The one thing that's
Mhm.
got me busy this week is really working on provisioning. So Fusion PBX provisioning. So we've had this for a while, and we had a user that was trying to use it, and for some reason, um, we have a in. So for the background for folks is that decent router sits on port 5000. So in Nginx, we have a config for decent router to route traffic to the backend service that is a Python script that basically is the UI for decent router. For if you're using Fusion PBX, you enable the integration we have. It will sync with Fusion PBX, grab all of the actual um, domains, and then it also will set it up so that dSIPRouter can be the gateway or proxy for doing phone provisioning. And so, for some reason, the the Nginx config was not getting copied over to the Etsy Nginx sites enabled directory. I still don't know why it wasn't is not doing it, but right now I just had them copy it over. But the thing that's most important though is that in Fusion PBX in the 5.0 series, they now require the domain name to be part of the request. So in the beginning, the way Fusion works is that since is home to a bunch of domains, you would basically send over a URL request, say, hey, here goes my MAC address, give me the config. Well, MAC addresses are unique, so it will go through and just grab the config for that particular phone. I think what happened here is that Fusion was like, this is maybe a little bit of a security issue. So in order for this to work in a 5.0 series, they require the domain name to be part of, or the host name to be part of the request. So if you use the dSIPRouter, let's say the name of the dSIPRouter server is say call it proxy .dSIPRouter.com, and you do a /app/provision in the MAC address,
hmm
and it won't work. However, if you set it up and make it so that it's a wildcard DNS name that points to dSIPRouter, and now the domain that you're going to is whatever the name of the domain, blah blah blah, app provision in the MAC address, it works without a problem. So that's a little nuance that I had forgot about. But I did a pull request for those out there, and I added it to our documentation. So in the next release of dSIPRouter, it'll be part of our documentation. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. It took a while to kind of go back and forth to figure out why this thing wasn't working properly. But those things happen.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I forgot. I totally forgot about that. It's been a while since we looked at the Fusion PBX stuff. I remember there was also like we had thought about doing some integrations there where we just pass through the UI, so the UI is accessible as well. But we also have like a lot of clustering and things that are not really easily kind of configurable per instance on the back end. So a little bit more complexity there. I think
Yeah,
we'll have to revisit that at some point.
yeah. So I thought about it a little bit. So right now we have one Nginx rule that basically passes app / provision off to Fusion PBX. But if you're gonna wildcard it so that everything points to dSIPRouter for like provisioning. Well, if you're gonna wildcard dSIPRouter, basically that wildcard the domain that it
Mhm.
points to dSIPRouter, that means now the UI. So this is say now they're trying to go if you want users to be able to log into Fusion PBX using their domain, they won't be able to. So I think what we have to do, even if they may not, I don't know. I have to figure out how we do it, but well, I know how to do it, but I guess it'll just always be there. In the Nginx config, we can always put a on port because that Nginx config is only for port 443. We can put a location / and then that will always point to or we make it yeah, I guess we could just do / actually 443 to point right to Fusion, I guess. I think
We can
that
also
we could.
change the headers when you pass it down on Nginx, but it would have to know the domains that it's sending it to.
Yeah, that's the problem. The other thing I was thinking about was that when we set up the integration, maybe we modify that logic. That logic has to be somewhere in the scripts of Fusion. So we also, I don't know where the logic is, but maybe we add something that it relaxes that rule. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. There's a few different ways that we could solve it. But anyway, that was the interesting thing that I ran into. Well, one of the interesting things I ran into. There's a few, but what anything from your side that's interesting? I have another one, but I want to give you the chance of talking about something that you've been finding weird, and I know you've been working on other projects, but let anything that's off the top of your head that
Yeah, I've been working on a lot of hyperscaling networks with Camilio, and all the like separate projects from this, but
yeah.
there's a lot of interesting things going on over there. A lot of interesting ways to aggregate test results and like aggregate like end-to-end tests across different parts of the network. So I think that's really interesting. I don't know if there's some of that, like the unit and just like simple end-to-end tests where it's like an outbound call or an inbound call. Those are pretty easy, even on a single instance, but I don't know if there's any way to integrate those in a generic sense where your network is going to be variable, and where dSIPRouter may be in a cluster or it may just be, in different netting scenarios, different network scenarios. I think those are problems that are really hard to like genericize. Really hard to like template that out into something that can be used across all those different scenarios.
Yeah, I think so. I want to throw an idea to you that that this is going to be kind of a big idea here that you may be like, Mac, you're going nutty, but I mean, I think you already know I'm going nutty.
We like nutty ideas here, though. I mean,
Yeah, man. So there's a big, there's a big push on AI, right? And I've been turned into a bigger. I've been using Visual Studio lately, not Visual. Is it Visual VS
VS
Code?
Code.
VS Code lately,
Oh, geez.
and I know I've been and I listened to because I look back at like when I became a developer a long time ago, a computer scientist, whatever you want to call it. I could like the way and the excitement and the way I solve problems is different than how people solve problems today.
Mhm.
And I think there's always going to be, there's only so many. I think like there's a segment of development that is still going to be kind of what I call like core or hardcore software developers. These are people building things such as the Linux kernel, people building things such as device drivers. I think there's still going to be people doing that. And I mean, yes, you could get some AI to do some of that, but some of these things is like you need physical devices to be connected in and all this good stuff to figure it out. But I think that the way that we build dSIPRouter may be different, as we need to start thinking differently about how we build it, and somehow uh, allowing building a model around all the different permutations of how you could use dSIPRouter. And instead of it being so static, because that's what we kind of have now with switches that switches on functionality and things of that nature, but
Mhm.
somehow make it so that people can put in what do they want to do, what kind of routing do they want to do, and then it generates kind of a uh, a customized or a specific dSIPRouter instance for them, um, or something of that nature. And maybe visual, maybe VS Code is the way that people are able to do that, right? I don't know, but I'm thinking like, how do we jump in? Maybe we don't need to, but how do we make it easier? So I don't want to say like, this is all philosophical, by the way. Like I don't want to say like um we want to use, like I don't want to say, hey, we should be using this whole AI world. We should jump on the AI bandwagon. I don't want to say that, but I want to more say like, how do we make people make it easier for people to use dSIPRouter? And that may lend us to a different interface, or making it, or doing something different on how people use the package and download it and all that good stuff. So anyway, I'm rambling, but I think you get my point. I think there's, we just start thinking about what does the UI look like moving forward.
Yeah, I think even if you're using AI tools to like try out new things and like take this code and do something with it, um, or if the AI tool is like how you're searching through the documentation, or if you're using it to, I don't know, say like configure like the system, just the data that runs your routes and stuff, you still have to kind of like scope it in. Like you have to set the bounds of how it can actually change things. Otherwise, it's just going to go run off and change the entire system, or like break things. It's not going to be really set. Yeah, it's not going to be kind of like set as a route, or it's not going to use the right things that you want. So if we can like, I think there's something to say there. Definitely about documentation. I love the search features that like AI gives you, that accessibility really easily, because it's great at tokenization. And it's great at like analyzing all that documentation. And we don't always know what the best way to present that. I think that's always been a problem. What is the best way to present that information? So that's a really good use case for it. But on the like configuring a system using AI tooling, I think that's a little bit harder. And I think you have to kind of set the framework for it so that the AI can actually, actually do the job correctly. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. So, but let's do a little. Let's have some fun. So, and let's just see what we can do here. Like, 'cause I always like playing around with these. So, let's say so. Use dSIPRouter to build a simple. No, I want to say simple. To build a I noticed that. Use DSIPRouter to act as a SIP provider for a number of PBXs in a company. Now, this may totally fail because I'm doing this live, but we'll see. Okay, so it gives me a document. Okay, look at this. That's cool. Let's see how far we get. Have you tried this before? I haven't tried this before. Have you?
I haven't tried this either. It's
Okay, let's see.
it.
All right. Well,
Where did
I mean,
where did the
it did.
W get from?
Huh?
Where did you get the W
Oh,
get from?
I don't know, but
Maybe because you're not pointing it to the docs, it's not grabbing like the install instructions correctly.
yeah. This. I don't think we have an install. I think this is wrong, right? They don't even have a master install. But okay. So all right, go to the but here goes. Here you go. Add ITSP, add PBS. Okay. So number one, they got wrong, but that's okay. We can correct that. Go to SIP provider. We don't have SIP providers in the DSIP. Go to SIP providers. Okay. This is making stuff up now. Okay. And then it says static add in return PS two ways. They got that static and registration. Go to endpoints, go to endpoint groups, inbound routing. They got that right. Assign DIDs, outbound routing. Okay. Okay. Use anti-fraud modules. We already have those there. Okay. And this done. Okay. So
a lot of this is pretty generic to SIP. I think it it doesn't know how to interface with it. It doesn't know to like go to the docs and look, like, hey, if we point to read the docs and say this is the documentation for this project and this is how it works, using that information, reference it. How could I do X, Y, Z?
Here, let's do that. Let's say here. Just for giggles, everyone. Let's just do that. I'm grabbing the docs here. Okay, and we'll say, okay, use the documentation in this.
Yeah, and what I was referencing is the scope. So I think like scoping, like people don't realize that these models that when you just go to ChatGPT and say, whatever your question is, that's a very generalized model. It's trained on just a ton of information on the internet.
Yep. And it's just regurgitating. It's regurgitating our docs. So before it was just making stuff up. Now it's using the docs as a sources. And it just tells you for advanced setup, do this. So anyway, I think that the interface these days, and the way people do these things, it's just different. I don't know. I'm thinking like, we're the reason why this is coming up to me is like we're thinking about like what is 1.0 going to look like. It's going to go based. What does the UI need to look like? How do we make it so that more people who don't have a SIP background can use dSIPRouter easier, which was our overall mission anyway, is to make it so that people can just pick this up and start doing it. And in a lot of regards, we have met that. Now we go to the next level. Everybody's using APIs in order to do voice AI and things of that nature. How do we make it easier so that people can use dSIPRouter when they're using these APIs? And maybe they don't need to. I mean, maybe they don't need to. Like, I've been doing a lot of work with LiveKit, and in reality, you don't hold on 1 second. In some regards, like you don't necessarily need a proxy server for working with LiveKit. You can, because with LiveKit you can route traffic um, to other servers or other systems or other services. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what do people need in those environments and make sure dSIPRouter can provide it. We can provide it for them. You know what I mean? That's one of the things.
So I want to actually, I'll do a hot take here. I want to
Yeah.
kind of say what the secondary mission, in my eyes, probably is going to kind of be going towards. And I'm thinking that is not for us to figure that out. I'm thinking that it's for us to provide the framework for all these things to be, deployed, and for all these different features and platforms to integrate. But then for, us to maybe do a few integrations, but for the community, other businesses, to publish their own integrations, and kind of, if there's a use case that's something that we've never seen before, there's going to be things that we're not tackling right now that other people are looking at. MCP, all these 3GP and 5G and all these different things that we're not tackling. We may be tackling more SIP things, or so somebody else can be like, all right, well, our company needs this use case built, let's create a module for it. I think that's kind of where we're aiming. And then that kind of like can integrate with the open source ecosystem that can also fund development. You can have licensed stuff, open source, closed source. I think that kind of makes the incentive for developers and companies to integrate with dSIPRouter as a platform even better. Because you can now pay your own devs to maintain this module instead of having to figure out how to get your open source funding, or how are we going to get this pot of money set aside because we're not bringing anything back in with this development.
Yeah. I think if we can get people to look at dSIPRouter as being the center of their SIP universe, or the first entry point into their SIP universe, I think that would be great. Because right now, like, sure, I think, like, for instance, like with LiveKit, what I'm positioning for LiveKit, like all these services, they need a place to run code. If you look at how SignalWire works, there's code that needs to be run so that it actually allows, when a call comes in, the code actually will pick up and do the task. LiveKit's the same way. Twilio's the same way. Really trying to position dSIPRouter as being a place where that logic can live, because at the end of the day, if you're really setting up a SIP service, you're going to have at least two dSIPRouter boxes. And so those boxes are already in your data center somewhere. Already you're paying for the compute, you're paying for the them to be always on, always monitored. You might as well run your logic for your agents or whatever logic that you have going on for your IVR right in dSIPRouter. And since we already have Docker already built there, you can just wrap it into a Docker image and you can just run it there. So I'm just trying to figure out ways to make it easier so that people can use it. Because right now, like, you would have, like, if you want to start building something with voice AI or something, any type of voice service, you're going to have like logic everywhere. You know what I mean? You're going to have, like, your carrier is going to be sending traffic to these agents or these places that generate a web server that generates code that tells, for example, Twilio or SignalWire what to do. If you're using voice AI, it's going to be sent down to the logic for the voice AI knows what it needs to do. Like, how do we make it easier for people to run these different things and know where they're all at and understand what their flow is in their company's ecosystem? Anyway, that's this, like,
well, I
where
think,
I've been thinking.
to follow up on that, I think that's kind of why I wanted to, because as we've looked over like the past 5 years, in the project, we started with a really small use case, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew based on business requirements. And that kind of gets really messy, and it's been very hard to maintain. I think that as we, have looked over that time, yeah, we started with this very small use case, but we didn't start with a unified goal for the project. And looking towards 1.0, I think if we start with that small, like minimal framework goal, and then we say, okay, if we want to add a component, making it simple again, because that's our number one goal, simple for administrators to install and configure and maintain. Can they just go click install on a module and get that feature that they need? And that's the only extra feature they have to add, or can they kind of customize that, pull in features in and out? Maybe one dSIPRouter has media services. Maybe one dSIPRouter doesn't need it. Maybe it needs to connect to LiveKit. Maybe it needs to have the Cinch integration, the nice integration, whatever carrier integration you want. I think that's starting at that minimal like subset is really a really good way to start with it, because then you don't have to worry about all these different components clashing with each other, because we see that a lot. It's like the MS Teams feature is using different parts of the routing config, but so are a bunch of other features. So the TransNexus integration, so
Right.
And you change one of them, it might affect the other one. So yeah, I think going forward, that like the framework idea and minimizing all of those dependencies is going to be a lot easier and more stable for people, especially if you know that when you install that module, you're only getting the minimum things you need, just the features that you need.
I know that's the thing, right? I think coming up with a framework for that will make it a lot easier to handle. All right. Well, so thank you for entertaining me and my thinking through this thing in our head. Hopefully people can get a sense of how we're starting to think through what this next generation of DSIP is going to look like. So anything else going on that you want to share before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. We've got a lot of other things cooking, so I think I'll get back to all of that. Anything else that you want to talk about before we jump off?
No, man. Take care. We'll talk soon. Everybody, we'll see you next week.
All right. See you guys.